So we're recording again now, and I was just saying that the format of this morning is that we're going to spend really short time, 4 or 5 minutes on field work again, and look at 1 or 2 slides from one of my PowerPoints and just reiterate why field work is valuable. Then we're going to do the big lecture, the new content lecture about happy employees and ERP for customer orientation. And you'll see that's quite big because it segs into the assessment. And then we'll end on that note. I'll do the first briefing of assessment 2 as we move into that stage. Now assessment 1 is done and dusted and everyone's happy with that and we've finished with it. So I'll do a full briefing on that. And then I've just told people I'll return to that as well next week. So don't feel like it's all done and all finished, the briefing. I'll brief again and go into more detail next time. So I want to share some slides, my first set of slides with you through share screen share, about keeping field notes. I won't go up to full presentation mode straight away because I don't want to go through all the background details of keeping field notes. I just want to zoom in to, and these are on the Moodle, these slides, this PowerPoint. And I just wanted to get, because there's a bit of theory behind it, but Jane has put theory really well with you, and people have picked up on that, and I can see it reflected in the field notes. I did a second marking and looked through them, a second assessment, but they're not marked. They're just commented upon. Actually, I will go to full screen for this. I think I want to talk about 2 slides from this PowerPoint. Is that looking clear on your screens, folks? Can you see a big like notepad?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Some points about keeping field notes. Field notes, because you've got something to sketch on really quickly, if you've got a hardback notebook with you all the time when you're doing specific field work, or if you're doing reconnaissance, if you're a tourism professional and you're doing reconnaissance for a guided walk, or you're doing reconnaissance if you're going ahead with a tour party and you're going to check out a hotel or a landing place for a cruise party and you've gone ahead a couple of days earlier. So you've always got a hardback notebook with you, so you've got something to rest on while you're writing and making notes. And here's an example of one that we did some field notes in Padstow at one of the cafe restaurants, a lunchtime cafe restaurant. And because I got the handbook with me, the notebook, it meant that I could look at a particular job design and sit and draw a diagram. You could I sat at the coffee table, the lunch table, and was able to draw this. And the project was to look at job design of meet, greet and seat. And in doing that, we spotted, when we're doing the consultancy work for the HR department of the people who looked after the staff there, we spotted another problem. And because we were sketching, because I was sketching and the other postgraduates who were with me were sketching, we spotted this problem that no one had really identified before. But of course the customer had, and the customer's experience was they were getting quite irritated and frustrated with it. So although we were looking at one particular job design, meet, greet and seat, we spotted something else going on. So the meet, greet and seat that we were trying to look at, if we go up, let me see if we can get this pen to work. I managed to get it working the other day. A pen, yeah. We're looking here at this is the entrance to the street. So I've drawn here. You can see my black drawing on the notepad page. That's the doorway that goes out onto the street. And I was sitting actually down here, seating and tables. I was with the party of postgraduates. We were sitting drinking coffee and eating toasted tea cakes, to tell the truth, around the table here and watching people coming in. And one of the members of staff, as they saw someone arrive, they were very organised and they would help them to take their coats off or let them take the coats off and they would hang them here. And that was really a neat idea because it's next to the door. So if the coats are damp from the rain, which they would be today, is that there's a nice draft, keeps that steam and mist and condensation being blown out of the cafe all the time. So it keeps the atmosphere nicer, don't want wet coats hanging just behind you when you're eating. There's a slight, well, no, I won't go into slight issues because there's a big issue I wanted to find later on. So we ended up that was working quite well. That waiter or waitress, that serving person, then would take them and go and seat them. There's some seating here in the main window. That was the main window onto the street. And there was some seating down here that was a bit cozier and darker. There was also toilets here and another place for coats. So if people put their wet raincoats there and then sat in their jackets or cardigans and then started to feel too hot, they could even pop them through here as well, the coats. So they got all of that meet, greet and seat really well sorted out, and we commended them on that. But we spotted something that began to happen. There was, the kitchens were down here, and along here was a big cake display. But so it meant that, let's get a different coloured pen for this one. So the serving staff were going up and down this line all the time, bringing the food out to the tables, coming out of the kitchens and taking food to the tables. And unfortunately, from design point of view, for the job design, the till was there on that corner. So it meant that what happened is people, instead of people paying at the tables, because British people don't know whether they ought to pay at the table, or if it's if the level of the restaurant is slightly lower, then they usually go to the till to pay. So people getting up and going and paying and forming a bill paying queue here. And you can see, I won't bother with another pen, but you can see that I've drawn here when we were doing the observation for job design, we saw that a bill paying queue built up here. So we showed people as little X's building up, and it impeded the flow of hot food. So someone carrying out a bowl of hot soup had to negotiate their way around all the people who were trying to pay their bill. And the people who were trying to pay their bill were in a hurry because they'd eaten and they wanted to go back shopping again in Padstow. So we looked at trying to solve that, and in the end we decided to move the till to here so that it kept that flow. It kept people moving away from the serving flow all the time. So the field notes acted as a consultancy document, and because we dated them, drawn them and kept them live, we were able to include them in the report to the cafe. So this served as a proper purpose. It's a lot longer ago than I thought, 2013. I only thought it was about 2 years ago. So always have a field note checklist. Make sure you title, date and place, so where you are and the date and time on there. Time can make a difference as well, whether it's lunchtime service or evening service in a restaurant. Number your pages so you can refer to them. If you're doing ethnography, so that means if you've spoken to a customer or you've spoken to a member of staff, if you're doing HR ethnography, then who is speaking, not just their name. In fact, you might want to hide their name behind an anonymous, gendered, made-up name, like Charlie. But who? Are they a member of serving staff? Are they a meet and greet member of staff? Are they a tour guide? So who is speaking in job role terms? And then sketch regularly, which is what my whole slide was about, to show point of view, where you are in the town and where, in that particular case, where I was in the restaurant. And that will help you later if you're captioning photographs or if you are giving a report in to your employer or to the people who've contracted you to do the HR consultancy. Also, when you're doing a walk around town and that type of field work out in the street, then note building names, street names and junctions. You think that you're going to be able to find it again on Google Maps, but it's much better to look up at a street name, photograph it and draw that corner of the street in your notepad as well. And it makes it a lot easier then to find. Building names the same. I was ages trying to find out the name of the old customs house in down on Sutton Harbour, around there. And in fact, I later found out that the second-hand bookshop was in an even older customs house down there. And you only find that out by being there and talking to people. That's all I wanted to show you really from those slides. I didn't want to labour it too much because you've spent a lot of time looking at a very specific role in field notes. It was just to tie up a few more ideas, because field notes, if you quote from your own field notes in an assessed piece of work, it's worth almost as much as quoting from a journal. Hey, it's worth 9 out of 10, and quoting from a journal is worth 10 out of 10, to try and put it in a kind of context like that. So where you've done structured empirical research out in the field, and by out in the field we mean in cafes, restaurants and hotels as well, and you've made structured notes that are dated and timed, they're as believable and valid as using reference material from a journal. We really value field notes, and we value your research, and we want you to gain confidence in doing field research, ready for your big dissertation project that you start in the spring next year. So I just wanted to stress how good field notes are, and what a good job you've made of them as well, with just one go at them, the first go. Okay, that's my point 2 done. I want to go to the full formal lecture now, and we're going to look at something that's going to be useful for the next thing. I don't know if I can find them. Whoops. Bear with me, I'll have to get them open in PowerPoint first. Now it should work. I'm going to do screen share again. Back to my big PowerPoint. Actually, no, just let me show you. Just interrupt myself a little bit. Down here on the Moodle, these 2 slides, my fieldwork slides are there. They're keeping field notes. So that's in section 3, HR, fieldwork and ethnography. And also the one that we're going to do today. It's called HR Strategy for Customer Orientation. So the real slides are there as well for you to follow any references up. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to share to those slides. HR Strategy for Customer Orientation. And try and go to full display mode so that you can see the writing. Is that looking pretty legible, full screen?
Yes. Yes.
Thanks, great. Thanks, guys. So it's the human resource strategy for customer orientation, and the strategy for customer orientation often is inbuilt into the employee relations program, the ERP. The employee relations program, there's a lot of new technical buzzwords today. The employee relations program is internally branded into the organizational culture. And in some textbooks, you'll see it referred to as ERP, ERP, Employee Relations Program. And sometimes you'll see it called internal branding, for your eyes only, as they say, inside the company. And sometimes it's called organizational culture. And this is where the HR department intervene in a strategic way into the organizational culture of a hotel or a tour company in order to make sure it's going along the right lines. And we're going to try and look at all of them today, but from a particular point of view, and that point of view is customer orientation. So how do we face the customer? And this one is the classic diagram, so classic that I wouldn't mind, and I believe you probably will, is that almost always include this one in any essay about HR. A quite recent, actually not that recent, it's 20 years ago now, but one of the best sources of it is from Heskett, Sasser and Schlesinger, and I've put the reference down there, and they call it the service profit chain. It's an old idea, and I've put it up in like a mathematical symbol at the top. Happy staff equals excellent customer service equals profit equals rewarded staff. So for a long time now, probably at least since the 1980s in Britain, we've as HR people, we've begun to believe that if we do have happy staff and we look after their well-being, then they will give us excellent customer service. So rather than being mean to staff, rather than bullying staff, rather than issuing orders to them and being too domineering, is to try and get them to blossom instead, and then they will look after the customers better. If a customer's looked after, then that's when we make profit, and so on into this cycle. And so this cycle that Heskett uses in this diagrammatic cycle of the 3 or 4 arrows going round, try and show how this feeds back into itself. We can start anywhere on the diagram, but if I get the purple pen to work, I want to start here, because as HR people developing a strategy, this would be the box that you started in. Remember, I talked quite a while ago now, it might be as many as 4 weeks ago, about what a resource is in the language that we're speaking in. A resource is a person that you've recruited cleverly and skillfully into your company, and then you've trained them so that they feel confident. So they're not just the employee. By the time they're a resource, they can do the job that you want them to do. So that's why we call it human resources management rather than staff management or employee management. We think of the resource as being someone with extra skills, extra confidence, and feeling extra supported by their team members and their boss. There are 4 key golden rules that the journal articles draw attention to, that a resource is and ought to be trained to do the job that they've got to do, motivated to do it, rewarded for doing it, and given a clear role so that they know what their job is. Not just trained, but given a role as well. If those are all in place and the HR manager has got a strong strategy, and that those are in place before that resource faces the customer, then we move over to this stage, this box, and the customer will be satisfied with the service encounter. And in our business, in tourism, in hospitality, in heritage management, we're trying to create a satisfied customer in that service encounter. Service encounters might be looking at some paintings on the wall in a gallery, say in the box at Plymouth. The service encounter might be being served by someone over a counter in a little cafe. It might be having silver service in an expensive fine dining cuisine restaurant in the evening. It might be the service encounter that they encounter, the experience they have when they first arrive at the hotel or first climb aboard the plane. So that encounter that have a few minutes or a couple of hours is what we're trying to make the customer satisfied with. Because if a customer is satisfied, they become loyal and will return. You might argue that, say, a once in a lifetime holiday or a honeymoon, you're not going to get customers returning. You don't want them to return on a honeymoon and have a new marriage next year, even though it might be good for profits. So we've got to think of loyalty spread across what we call a customer base. So you might bring them on your travel, your tour company, bringing them to the southwest of England, to the West Country on a honeymoon trip. You might then have a first year anniversary trip. So they become loyal and they come back and have all the memories that they enjoyed when they came in June 2019 and come back in June 2020 and enjoy the holiday again. So it's the same holiday, but now it's a first anniversary holiday. Another way of looking at loyalty is you might think that when you were 13 or 14, you went to one of the Disney World or Disneyland experiences, but you might still want to go when you're 20, 21, but you feel a little bit too old and you're a bit embarrassed now. But you're loyal in that you might tell your little niece or nephew to go, or you might work out a way of treating them to a holiday at Disney World and Disneyland, and craftily getting in on the holiday yourself as well. So this idea of loyalty by being a return customer might not necessarily be the customer coming back, but it might be that they encourage members of their immediate family or their friends to do something similar. Or they enjoy the brand and they use the brand again. So they had a great experience in a core Novotel, and then they think, I've got to go to Lyon next week, or I've got to go to Berlin next week. I'll look for a Novotel because I know it's going to be clean, comfortable. I'm always going to get a big room, much bigger room than say another brand. Can't think of another brand offhand. Holiday Inn. I know Holiday Inn is probably bigger than Novotel. But so you're also creating brand loyalty, and then they return to your brand as well as their family returning to your brand or place. A customer being loyal or recommending to a member of the family. So this idea here means that the customer was cost a lot less to gain as a customer. For me to try and persuade you all to go on a cruise now that costs £6,200, it's going to take me a lot of work and a lot of money in advertising and promotion. But if you've already been on one and you really enjoyed it, you were satisfied with the service encounter, then you're much more likely to buy it, or to buy it as a treat for someone, or to recommend it to someone else in your family or friend group. So it's a lot less expensive to get a return customer to return, because you've had a chance to serve them and to look after them well in the first instance. So the customer returning creates more profit, much more profit than trying to get that first customer, the new customer who doesn't know your product. So that gives you a much more profitable transaction to get that customer again. Those additional profits then can pay for resource awards. If you remember resource awards from 4 or 5 weeks ago, resource awards are motivations, incentives that you give to your employees. It can pay for retraining, and retraining is often seen as an incentive, particularly for graduate staff. So people who've already got a degree, they tend to feel it's a bonus and a benefit, an incentive to be sent away on a 3-day course to learn how to use Microsoft Teams, for example. They see it as a treat, even though it's still being at work. And it also gives you extra profits for an improved service environment. I mustn't forget that. And it's not just the employee that we're improving, or the resource, but this way of improving the service encounter by making the environment better. So we can afford to get the carpets cleaned, or let's get it carpeted, that restaurant area. Makes it much nicer to be in. Let's refit those chairs, or buy some new chairs. So we can improve the service environment as well. And there's been a lot of work for a long time, since at least the 1980s, done on research on improving service environment, makes customers feel more satisfied with the service encounter. So much so that some hotels will even have a perfume that they release into the lobby area, the welcome area, to improve the service environment. In the great scheme of things then, at least 2 of these, retraining and paying for resource awards, goes back into at least these first 3 of the happy employee, the happy staff. And happy staff means satisfied customer, and satisfied customer means loyal customer, which means a cheaper customer to recruit, more profits. You see how it begins to work and goes around that cycle. So it's a really good model to, if you're an HR manager and you're trying to persuade your CEO to spend more money on those 4 points, training, motivation, reward, and clear role, then it gives you a great argument tool to do that. And it's fairly well proven when you look at research, and you'll see people returning to this cycle, the service profit chain, and how companies link profit and growth to loyalty. And go back to it and use it. There are two things if you're doing the research yourself, and I know that you've just experienced it because you've just been through it by doing the field work, is if the resource doesn't know what to do and they don't know how to do it, that's when the systems break down. And when you see on the floor, if you're doing field work and observation in a restaurant or cafe or hotel, that's when you see the service environment and the service encounter break down at its worst. So first of all, the second one, don't know how to do it, that links with training. So if you're not trained to do something, say you're not trained to be a tour guide, and we send you out to be a tour guide and you don't know how to do it, then you'll feel a sense of anxiety. And over the last 2 weeks, you've just done that. Last Thursday, in fact, you were suddenly a different type of person. You were being a tour guide on a reconnaissance mission, and you'd only had about an hour's training on how to do it. And it probably needs more to get you up to speed, to feel confident and comfortable with doing that. So you're in a kind of a liminal state, a grey area of whether you were trained. And those moments of anxiety that you felt when you're thinking, should I be doing this? I don't know how to do this. What do I do here? So it's you don't know how to do it so much, and that's tied to being trained. And hopefully it wasn't too painful, but you can reflect on last Thursday and think there was some gaps there in my training. I didn't know how to do what I was meant to be doing there. I keep falling back into this other one, this thing about don't know what to do. So the top one, don't know what to do, is related to 4 for your research. Number 4 is given a clear role. And you see this a lot. And particularly, again, last week, we asked you to be tour guides on reconnaissance. We asked you to be concierge people from the hotel. We asked you to be tourism researchers. We asked you to be HRRM consultants. So you were given about 5 different roles to be that day, different hats that you had to wear. We're in a safe academic environment, so you could cope with it because you knew that there was people pushing you to do that. Me and Jane trying to encourage you to go and explore these different roles. But if you're doing a really busy service in a hotel restaurant, an evening service, serving 80 people, a coach load, and then the usual regulars there, then that's really, having a clear role is really important. Otherwise, you're going to feel awful about it. So are you the floor manager that evening? Are you a server? Are you the server that does the wine, the sommelier? So you need to be given a clear role for what you're doing for that particular task. And so often, when we do observation in restaurants, we see that people haven't got clear roles. They don't know whether they're meant to be on meet and greet, as I spotted back in my field work. Actually, they did know they were good. They did know they got that role. But the people working on the till didn't know that they were meant to be on the till. And that often a waiter or waitress is assumed to be working on the till, and it needs to be made clear to them, if you're their boss or the line manager, saying, you'll be working on the tills tonight as well as waiting on, because we've got less staff. Do you know how to use the till? Come with me and I'll show you how to use it. So you keep looking at 4 and 1 as you start a new service. If you are the floor manager and line manager for that evening, you keep checking on 4 and 1. And if someone isn't trained to do something, you try and solve the problem. So if you're the line manager and you can use the till, and you'll probably use the till for them for the first few cash transactions, payments. So watch out for that happening. If you're strategic, which is what I'm asking you to be in your module, then you'll look at 4 and 1 before it happens. So it won't be that last minute on the restaurant floor that it all goes wrong. It'll be solved weeks before, months before, and people be trained and given clear roles. You've started to look at that, and some really good work in the first assessment where some people alongside the table of the itinerary, they've said which member of staff, at least in job role terms, say tour guide, which member of staff is going to accompany the tourists, the holiday makers during that particular activity. And so it's important then that that person knows that they've been given a clear role. Employee empowerment comes about and connects with customer orientation by giving more, almost giving more freedom to employees. And we're a little bit afraid of saying that word, so we've got a nice technical word for it, and that's the word autonomy. So we try and give more autonomy to the employee to perform their job, to the resource, let's call them. Oops, it's not very well drawn. And this quote from Gabrielle Gazzoli and Hanser and Yumi Park from their 2012 journal article, Employee Empowerment, really conveys it really well and moves us on from simple training and job specification. It takes us into a different area, and this area is about empowerment. Empowerment comes about from a management system that gives employees, and I would say resources there, if I was writing this in my textbook, that gives resources more power and autonomy to perform their jobs. It's logical to think, they're trying to persuade you with, that's quite rhetorical writing, that empowered employees could use this freedom to make customized and quick decisions to better serve their customers' needs. A great example of it is often cited, a little scenario, is that someone's come in and they've got a little baby that they've got to feed by bottle. They come into the cafe, back to that cafe again in Padstow, and they want to heat the milk up because they've been out cold all morning and the milk's got cold. In fact, it's deliberately kept cold so it doesn't go off. And they want the milk heating up. So they come up to the counter in the cafe and say, could I have some really boiling hot water to pop the bottle in to warm it? And the good employee, the empowered employee, would say, yes, but let me heat it up for you here on the counter. I don't want you carrying boiling hot water across the restaurant, across the cafe on a crowded Saturday afternoon. And so they would heat the water for them and keep an eye on the bottle and take a little bit more responsibility. We often call it going that extra mile and being able to go those extra decisions to better serve their customers' needs. So if the employee, if the resource feels that their line manager is going to be happy with that, happy with them making customized, quick decisions that might cost a little bit of time, cost a little bit of hot water, and even make the decision, hey, I'm not going to charge this person for hot water. I know lots of cafes have started to do that. If you refill your cold water bottle, they want to charge you 10p or 20p. And it's probably counterproductive in terms of customer experience to charge money for something that's probably going to cost 0.1 of a penny or 0.5 of a penny. And buying the customer's loyalty is worth that half a p or 1p. So what we're trying to create, and what Gazzoli is trying to say, is we've got to find ways of empowering the customers, empowering the resource, the employee, and that's by having a boss who tells them that they can make those decisions on the hoof in live situations. By feeling empowered, that creates customer orientation, so they feel, as an employee, you feel you can do that little bit extra, you can take a bit more autonomous decisions and perform their jobs and go beyond what it says in the guidebook and do that little bit extra for the customer. And the customer then feels oriented. And strangely, it's not just the customer that feels better, it does then result in job satisfaction. And we in this module, being HR managers or HRM consultants, are thinking all the time we're trying to improve job satisfaction because we want happy employees, happy staff, because happy staff make the company work better. With job satisfaction comes organisational commitment as well. Organisational commitment is where the employee, and we did this in the PowerPoint slides called Unpacking the EOR. Organisational commitments is where you believe in the company. We all love Plymouth University and we've got a great investment in it. We're committed to it because it's looked after us. And we're trying to, as we go to work in companies, if we believe in the company as a HRM worker, then we are trying to convey that organisational commitment across to other members of staff so they feel that too. Let's move on. There's a great little case study, he calls them, I remember the name of the author in a moment. I think I've got it referenced somewhere. He looks at organisational culture and trying to develop a ERP, an actual employee relations program, spelt in British English, UK English with a double ME. It's not a software program. It's a program of activities to give a kind of internal branding exercise. And this is often analysed, designed and communicated either by the HRM department, or often bringing in external HR management consultants, which might be a career move that you decide to make, is to go and work for a consultancy. And a great case study that he looks at is the Pizza Hut case study. And these little cartoon characters are taken from that case study. It's from Nixon, that's the book, page 61 down here. One of the HR books that I recommend that you do try and gain access to. And I'm pretty sure we've got the e-version. It's funny, it's really hard to find HR books that talk about English, Scottish or Welsh HR. They're nearly always about Australian or American. And Nixon does cover a lot of British and UK HR. And so he's aware of all of the legislation in Britain. And he writes this small case study about the warm fuzzies and cold pricklies and how metaphor was used by Pizza Hut. Very quickly and very briefly, there was a little guidebook developed and designed. A set of posters were designed that were only shown to employees, so they were in the staff room. Customers couldn't see these, hence the expression "for your eyes only," and it was just for employees' eyes. And they were given two characters to live up to: the warm fuzzy, cuddly, round-eyed, cuddly powder puff creature, and the malevolent, spiky-haired, spiky-beard dwarf, the cold prickly. And it was to respond to the fact that often, particularly in breakfast service, is that employees were bringing their home problems to work and still feeling upset with something that had happened at home. They were taking it out on the customers, which wasn't very good for business, wouldn't lead to profits and customer return, and it eventually would affect the success of the business and the employment. So they tried to solve this during the 1980s and 1990s with an employee induction program that used a booklet called Feelings and talked about it using these two cartoon characters just to push it slightly to one side, so it was a metaphor. And this might be an idea that you refer to and pick up on and use in assessment too. So I'll stop the share and come back to real life for a moment. Look at the time. Perfect timing, about 40-45 minutes to cover that first bit. I'm just going to pause the recording back on again now, and I'm going to share screen back into the module handbook that I've got open in Word somewhere, somehow. Where have I got it? No, it's not there. It's never there. Bear with me. I'll come out of share. I'll go and open it. Because if it's the last thing I've had open and I've got the cursor on it, it does find it then. I'm sure there's another way in share. Right, so share screen, module handbook, great. Turn the size up a little bit on the module handbook. So is the text quite readable at your end?
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Is that okay? First of all, we've finished W1, assessment 1, the individual proposal document. Good. We're now on to the HRRM strategy presentation. And this is the briefing for it. Here's the dates. I'm going to ask you to present it in class over those last 2 weeks in term. I'm not going to ask you to present it in class, am I? Because we're not going to be in class. So that's the first one. So that's going to be Zoom. And we'll so that we haven't got any timetabling problems, we'll use the timetabled classes that are all nicely set up and are working perfectly well, and the clicks work on them in your timetable. And so with 5 or 6 people giving those presentations, we might get through them all in the first 2-hour session, might feel a bit tired, and or there might be some unforeseen problems that someone can't present in the first week. And we've got a little bit of a safety net that we could run over into week 2 as well. So they're on weeks commencing the 7th of December and the 14th of December 2020 this year. So I want you to stand behind your PowerPoints and talk to them in the same way that I do these on Zoom like this. Why do I do this? Why do we make you do this at university? It's because you really do face this in work when you're taking leadership roles in industry. And I know a lot of you have done work and are in part-time or full-time jobs as well. And as you go up the management scale, you're asked to present. It's a way of getting all of your ideas in order beforehand and then telling a group of people really efficiently some key points. And when I was at British Airways, I had to do it a lot. They make you do it as a leader, as a projects leader and a project manager. It keeps everyone, it's a bit like school assembly. It keeps everyone at the same starting point. So they're great skills to have. I'm also going to ask you to e-submit it to the DLE, so upload it. And I want you to upload it as a narrated PowerPoint. That will throw you into a bit of a panic, and I will return to that and talk to you about it a couple more times about what I consider is a narrated PowerPoint. And that's got a proper deadline to it, that a cut-off date that will, if you go past it, you will lose marks. And that's Wednesday, 16th of December, 3 p.m. And I know now that the Vice-Chancellor has sent out that message saying that she's transitioning the whole university to be closed down beginning from the 3rd of December. So by then you will be at home. So do check that you've got some good Wi-Fi and that you can upload big things, quite big files from where you're going to be on Tuesday the 15th or Wednesday the 16th of December. So give some thought to that. If you begin to feel a bit panicky that you can't upload big things, try and find out beforehand, and it'll give me chance to think about a solution for that. So do try and anticipate. These files, when you're trying to upload a PowerPoint, they're big. They're 9, 10, sometimes 12 meg, I've seen them, megabytes. And it can cause a few difficulties uploading them from home. So we'll look at the technical and look at and explain to you what a narrated PowerPoint is in my terms. And I'll show you how to find some in Microsoft Teams right at the end of this. Let's scroll down now and look at the brief itself. In order to save you lots of work, about all of the design of the tour again, you'll find that assessment 2 is your same tour. So whatever you've worked on for your first tour company, it's the same scenario. It's the same Chinese hotel company that have become a tour company. It's the same that they've bought the same hotel here in the West Country of Britain, the one that you've used already. And it's turning that hotel to accept a specific tour product, customers, holidaymakers on a particular tour product. So all the scenario is exactly the same. So you don't have to go through all of that work again, of all of that design that you've done, which takes all of that away and lets you get down to the nitty-gritty of presenting some HRM strategies for moving your hotel staff to this new product. Please rehearse your presentation and ensure that you finish in 12 minutes. At the end of the presentation, the lecturer, me probably, will ask you up to 3 questions. These aren't to catch you out. These are to give you opportunity to refine certain points that you have made. I might feel that you haven't expressed something about the employee relationship program fully, and I don't want to close you down. I don't want to not give you the chance to earn the marks for that. So I'll ask you a question about it, and it might trigger something in your mind that you haven't had a chance to say in your presentation, but you had read up on, or to put you in a state where you can answer it, and then you can gain some extra marks for that as well. So the questions aren't to prove you wrong or to catch you out. They're me being on your side, helping you to express something that I felt wasn't expressed in the presentation. So I'm on your side when I ask those questions. If I don't ask any questions, it means you've expressed everything really well. You've got to cover 2 HRM strategies with 4 slides for each one. It might mean then that you will have a title slide outside those 4, and you will have some way of showing your references. And I've seen that postgraduate students often like to show their references on slides at the end and then just whiz through them. They don't even talk to them. You know, this thing about talking to your slides. They just say, and here's the references. I'm not going to talk about them, but here they are. And they run over a couple of slides at the end. In those 2 HRM strategies, I want you to examine the issues that your new product, tour product, will create for staff, for your staff in the hotel, and show how you will anticipate these and what you will design and put in place to ensure that the change is positive for both the staff and the customer. So I'm asking you to see through the eyes of your staff into that customer experience. The first strategy is the HRM strategy called Developing a Feeling for Empowerment. And I want you to explain on your first set of 4 slides how you will develop a feeling for empowerment in staff and how you'll connect that to customer satisfaction and hence to repeat business. So you can imagine that one of your slides is going to have the one that I spent a long time on in my PowerPoint today, showing that cycle of customer satisfaction and repeat business. See also this book chapter for guidance, Lashley 2002, A Feeling for Empowerment. It's in chapter 15 of a book by D'Annunzio Green, Maxwell Watson and Watson, called Human Resource Management, International Perspectives in Hospitality and Tourism. There's usually not too expensive second-hand versions of this up on Amazon. We've got copies in the library, but I know it's really difficult to get to the library. But I need to think quickly about a solution. If you can't get one over the next 7 or 8 days, say try for about 8 days, and then if you still can't get hold of this copy, am I promising something I can't deliver? I am. My copy's at work. Oh. If you can't get hold of a copy, I'll do a short briefing sheet with the key point that I want you to draw from it on a feeling for empowerment. And I'll make a briefing sheet and put it up on Google Docs and give you a link to it so you can find it easily. In fact, I'll do that anyway. I'll leave a note to myself. Note to self, do this, so that you're not disadvantaged if you can't find the whole book chapter. Good. But do have a dig around, see if you can. I think it's such a great book. I've bought it. I've got to left it in the office, which I can't get to. It's really worth having because it looks at, it's nearly all British hotel and human resource management. So it's really good. The second 4 slides are organisational behaviour and knowledge management in the internal environment. You've already touched on a lot of this. You know about knowledge management. You've wrestled with Microsoft Teams, so you know it firsthand. Somebody made a good job and brought Microsoft Teams into their first essay. Brilliant. And this is what I'm looking for, is where you're using some life experience from knowledge management tools, collaboration tools, and thinking about how you might implement them in the internal environment. Just a reminder for the internal environment, it's what goes on behind the scenes between employees and their relationship with the company and their relationship with each other. So these might be posters that only the employees, the staff can see, but not the customer. There might be an app that only the employees, the resources can use, not the customer. In your work, explain how your new employee relations program, your new ERP, is designed to increase revenue per available room. And this is pretty tough, is trying to link it back to how you're going to make more profits in your hotel. This revenue per available room in the literature is often written RevPAR like that, with an uppercase R, lowercase EV, and then PAR, or written in capital letters, kind of in camel script. How will you use Web 2 technologies? And that's what Microsoft Teams is. It's a Web 2 technology. Google Docs is a Web 2 technology. It's where people can write onto the web. How will you use Web 2 technologies for your staff to form a community? For guidance, please see this journal article or use it. I'm saying do go to it. It's Sionji Mehmet and Mehmet, Employee Relation Programs and Hotel Performance. And it's in the Journal of Human Resources in Hospitality and Tourism. It is gettable and accessible if you logged into Primo. There's also, this one might be a little bit more, you might not be able to find this one, but Ocumus 2010, we've got the book in the library. I don't think it's ebook though. It's a bit too old to be ebook. Strategic Management for Hospitality and Tourism, Chapter 4. I think only if you go into the library will you find that. So don't take risks. Don't go into the library if you don't feel comfortable, but try and find a general book on strategic management. Try and find one on strategic management for hospitality and tourism online as an ebook. If you can't find one for hospitality and management, find any book on strategic management and read up on employee relations programs. And if you go back to the top, the opening slide, my title slide, you can see those other names that are used for an ERP as well. So do dig a little bit and go, if you can't find something in our industry area, tourism and hospitality, do go out and wander out into more general management and to look at management books and management titles, ebooks and management journals to try and look at employee relations programs. So do use journal articles and books to support your arguments. So keep referring it back to your tour company as well in your tour product. Use the full references section, so show them on the sheets. What am I saying? You won't hand those in class. We won't be in class. We'll definitely be at home now, thanks to the Vice-Chancellor's communication to us all. So put those full references onto the last PowerPoint slides. They won't count towards your PowerPoint time, and they won't count towards your number of slides. I'm asking you for 4 slides for each issue and a title slide. But do put them so that we can find them again, because you know by now that you marked on references. So pop them on your slides. Great. Your first slide, outside of the 2 sets of 4, will show your name and a graphic design relevant to your new service. Store your PowerPoint presentation on your University of Plymouth OneDrive, and then you can share the link with the module leader, whoever's marking. It'll probably be me. And it means that we can keep the work as well for the external examiner visiting. We won't give it back to you. I know things when you share things by OneDrive, the other person's got a copy automatically, but do keep copies of your own work, because you've shared it and you've given someone, if you give someone write access to it on OneDrive, then beware that they aren't spoiling it. So still keep a copy offline, say on a USB stick, or email it to yourself. Keep another copy, because the copy that you share might become spoiled or lost. And there's a little graphic showing how to do a share link like that. I'm going to spend a bit more time getting into the nitty gritty of it. How are we doing for time? We're still all right for time. Let's stop share and ask any questions on that. So any questions on the briefing? I'll switch off record, resume recording again. So recording's back on again, folks. I'm going to go and do share screen into Microsoft Teams. There it is. I know the text is quite tiny and grey on Teams, but can you at least see a kind of purpley coloured screen there?
Yes.
Great, thank you, brilliant. This is part of my great master plan of knowledge management and knowledge sharing. What I did with my first years is a little project called, actually it turned to be quite a big project. I called it Track PowerPoints with the K in brackets. And it meant that they had to do loads of work. And in the notes section, does that kind of work? It's trying. Oh, here it comes, it's working. I'm really pushing this computer now because it's both zooming and it's going to fetch loads of data down for Microsoft Teams. In this project, they had to do a narrated PowerPoint, doing something quite similar, going and exploring the hidden gems of Plymouth, or the ones who were in lockdown at home. And Matthias here was on lockdown in Singapore, I think he was. No, in Seoul, in the Republic of Korea. So there's some exciting ones in there as well. And they had to make a really short track PowerPoint. That's just 4 slides. T for title, the R for route, A for attraction, K for cafe in the track, and then K, the knowledge happens after someone's watched their track PowerPoint. So that happens in the viewer when they finish watching it. And so all down here, because you guys have got access to this as well, which is partly what I'm trying to do, is to show what happens when you share across different parts of an organisation. You would never normally meet a first year, and a first year wouldn't even know what an MSc postgraduate taught is. They don't even know what you are. And yet here we are, we're able to look at each other's work. They were happy. They knew that this was going to be semi-public. At least anyone in Plymouth University can see this. And so it's a chance for you to watch some of these. Some of them have done them as PowerPoints and they've put the narration on as a voiceover, and you have to click on a little grey loudspeaker icon on the page for it to play the voice. That's at its most, it's its first level, kind of it's 0 level or primitive level. And that I'm happy with that if that's as far as you get with a narrated PowerPoint. And some of these first years have only got that far. Some of them have then processed that, and PowerPoint lets you process them. You can do a save as, and it lets you process them and turn them into a M4V, a video. And some of them have done that, and you can see them played as videos here. Some of them have been even cleverer, and I'd say this is reaching the pinnacle of a narrated PowerPoint, and they've then figured out how to upload that M4V onto a semi-private area of their own YouTube account. So if you've got a Google account, you've also got a YouTube account, a free YouTube account. So you can open your YouTube channel, and you can make videos or upload videos onto there in M4V. I hope I'm saying the right file name extension, M4V format. And YouTube will crunch them and make sense of them and turn them into watchable videos on YouTube. You can set a privacy level on YouTube that only people who you know can see the URL, the short URL for it, are allowed to watch that video. So it's nearly private. You've got to trust that people then won't share that link with someone else, because it does start to leak a bit then. But it's practically private if you put it onto YouTube. I'm not saying go all the way and put it onto YouTube. I'm saying go as far as at least doing it as a M4V, so it plays as a video. And you can keep a video, although videos are huge files, you can keep a video on OneDrive and share it through OneDrive. So they're there for you to enjoy and to play through. It's a different project. It's a little bit closer to your fieldwork project. So that one from Sean, for example, can't remember how good his was. There's a lot.
Discovering the Mayflower Steps.
I think I'll stop share there. I'll switch them off to stop
I
share.
began.
Because I know that the sound gets into it is. If you start to play them, I can't remember. I think you have to do something and let it listen to the computer audio rather than to the talking audio. But there's some nice ones, and they're quite an inspiration if you look at a few of those. And I think go that far for now. And then at the top end of the lecture next week, I'll go through some more technical detail about doing recordings onto the back of a PowerPoint. I feel like if I do it now, I'll start croaking, but I think it'll be an overload, because I want you to think about the content of the brief, and I want you to think about the content of that huge big lecture. It's a complex lecture, that customer orientation lecture is. If you try and mix that with new techie stuff, you'll explode. But don't worry, don't feel like you're wasting time. If you do want to start at least your PowerPoint, you can start a PowerPoint and you can add sound on later. You don't have to go and start a fresh new PowerPoint. So if you have some great ideas and you want to at least set down a couple of PowerPoint slides, you can start straight away, and you can add sound narration over them later, and you don't have to start again, so it won't spoil them. Any worries or concerns? I'll just switch off the recording completely, stop recording, because I want to say something.